What we're going to do is just show you a mediation, and you won't understand everything you're seeing. So I'd like you to, but you'll get a sense of what the arc of a mediation looks like, so that when we start to break it down in the following classes, you'll be able to have something to reference that you've seen where you saw the whole thing all at once. Sometimes when we do this, people get really caught up in the narrative and, wow, what's going on with these sisters? And they forget that they are supposed to be looking at the larger picture here. So I have a few reminders over here of what you might want to be looking for. So first of all, ears, right? Look at how well the mediators are empathizing. See if you can notice that, hear that. What language are they using? What does that look like? Asking questions. What kind of questions are they asking? Open-ended questions. How many questions are they asking? Are they asking a lot? Are they being directive? Or are they letting the parties direct it? Like, it's a chance for you to start to see how those questions work in a flow. Reflecting back, what does that sound like to do that in the context of a mediation? Summarizing. How often do they summarize? When does it look like they're summarizing? Okay? Again, the general process. You'll be looking for the arc of the mediation. So let me explain to you what that is. The mediation is a voluntary process that usually takes about 3 hours, and mediators are neutral, and we use a panel of 2. The process is that when the parties come to the mediation, at the beginning of the mediation, you'll see the opening of the mediators. They're going to do an explanation, kind of what I'm doing now, so you'll hear it again. They are going to ask each party to speak to them one at a time directly to the mediators, so the mediators can get a sense of what's happening for those parties. And they might ask some questions to clarify, to make sure they really have an understanding of what's going on. So that'll happen to a point where the mediators feel like they have enough information and the parties seem ready. They'll ask the parties to start to speak to each other. And then the bulk of the mediation is spent by the parties having a dialogue with each other, with the mediators intervening when they need to sort of facilitate understanding or help them when they're stuck. And then if the parties make enough progress to get to some agreements, if they've resolved some things and it seems like they're ready, then the mediators will help them work towards coming up with agreements that they can then write down. And when they get to that point, if they get to that point, those agreements come from the parties. The mediators aren't going to suggest anything or fix anything for them. They're going to just elicit that, or they may have been tracking some kind of suggestions that came from the parties throughout the mediation. They might bring those back up. We may not get to see that because it often doesn't even happen in 3 hours. We're going to be having a 2-hour mediation, so you just really might not get that far down the road. So, but you never know. These are very skilled mediators. So that's what you'll be looking for, is just sort of see how that flow goes, how they transition from one thing to the other, or back and forth. And that, again, because you don't have a lot of experience with that might not make a lot of sense yet tonight. Styles, I kind of picked Brad and Maddie, sort of wondering if their styles were a little bit different, which is a good thing. So that's something you're going to notice, because everybody mediates a little bit differently. You have to mediate in a way that's really authentic for you. So that's something else you can be aware of, how they're doing it differently, maybe how you relate to those different styles. And the last thing I want you to practice is remember positions and interests. So they're going to be listening for the interests underlying what people are saying. And that's something you can practice doing too. What are the underlying feelings that people are communicating? And also, what are the underlying interests? See if you're understanding them, and if the mediators are picking up on them and following up, and you're like, oh yeah, I would ask that too. So be really engaged listener. Don't just kind of watch it like a TV show, but really, be engaged and watch for certain things. Especially if any of you had questions about the mediation process, or while we were learning some skills, how do they do that in mediation? This is your chance to maybe see some of that in action. So what's going to happen is we have our participants, our parties who are in conflict. These are real mediators. They are volunteers for us, some of our best mediators. And the way we set it up tonight to make it the most real for you is we have our role players, but Brad and Maddie have not, I'm going to read the case as much as they know, and they haven't rehearsed or practiced anything. So this is pretty close to a real mediation, as you're going to be able to see. They're going to, Brad and Maddie, I want you guys to take the break for the mediation. When you seem like you guys need a break, then we'll take a break. So you're calling the break, and then we'll all take a break when they decide the mediation needs a break. And then we're going to do this until 8 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock, we're going to stop the mediation. We're going to reset everything back up so that we'll have a panel up here of our other mediators. And then you'll have an opportunity to kind of debrief and break down the mediation by asking them questions about what you saw. And then we'll have a lot of different people answering the questions, so again, you'll kind of hear the different perspectives that they all have. So that's sort of the structure tonight. So we'll go till about 8 with the break called by the mediators, and then from 8 till 8:50 or so, it'll be a Q&A to debrief it. I think that's all I need to tell you. And I'm going to do introductions after the mediation. We'll introduce all the other mediator coaches who are here, and Brad and Maddie I will introduce now again as our mediators and our participants. So also one last thing, because there's 4 people facing each other and it's not a great view for anybody really, feel free to get up and walk around and move around. If there's an empty seat, go ahead and sit there. You might want to have a different vantage point. Watching the mediator sometimes, watching the parties sometimes. Again, watch for the body language and eye contact. So you might want to move around if you're not seeing everything very well. Okay? Is everybody ready? Let me tell you about, one last thing. This is Edwin, and he is been a volunteer for SEAS and helps us out and was also a student in this class before. And so he's going to film the mediators this time, so we might be able to actually illustrate the process in the future by showing some of the footage. So there's, we're going to ask you to sign waivers so that we can maybe use your picture, or if you get on film, that we can still use that. So before you leave, we'll be asking you to sign that. And then be aware that if you do end up standing back here, that you probably will be on camera.
Barbara, I actually didn't bring it up yet. So we'll bring all of those next week.
Okay, so the conflict. Alice and Ella are sisters. Oh, there's one last piece. One of the things that the mediators do that I didn't want to take time for tonight, but we will talk about next week, is Brad and Maddie met about half hour to 45 minutes early. So they've been talking to each other about their different styles, about how they feel tonight. Is somebody kind of sleepy and they might check out and need someone to nudge them? They looked at the case a little bit. Are they going to be triggered a little bit by something that's happening? Are they working on something, like working on doing good summaries? So can I do the summary? They're also worked on dividing up who's going to say what at the opening. So we'll show you that next week, but I just wanted to skip ahead. So we're going to skip ahead right to the point where the parties are entering and they'll be naming the parties. So the background is that Alice and Ella are sisters. 4 months ago, their mother died after a long and lingering illness. The mother died without a will, and the sisters must work together to make decisions about how to dispose of the family property. Ella, who is single, had quit her job 5 years ago and moved in and provided in-home health care for their mother. Alice and her husband, or her partner, had been augmenting the mother's income and had been paying the mother's property taxes and maintaining her home repairs. Ella believes that the property should be split 50-50, and Alice thinks that before there's any split, she and her partner are entitled to be first paid back for their financial contributions. Okay? So I turn it over to the mediators.
Welcome. Hi, Brad Smith.
Hi, I'm Ella.
Ella, good to meet you.
Hi, Ella, welcome. I'm Maddie.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Maddie. Nice to meet you.
So,
Welcome. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Please make yourself comfortable. We have some light refreshments here for you. As I said, I'm Maddie. This is Brad.
I'm Brad.
Please feel free to use our
Bathrooms
first
are
names.
right out here. That's an important part of mediation.
Yes, let us know if you need to take a break for the restroom or anything like that. We are going to be here for about 2 hours today, and I hope that you can commit to that time. I think you said ahead of time, but I wanted to double check.
Yeah,
Yes?
shouldn't be a problem.
Great, and we're going to take a break about midway through, so just keep that in mind.
Okay.
For about 10 or 15 minutes. And if you have a cell phone, we ask you turn it off so we can all be fully present
Sure, mine's
and
off.
ready. Now, have either of you participated in a mediation before? Do you know anything about it?
No, this is her idea.
Okay. Alice, have you done a mediation before?
I've witnessed them a couple of times, but I've never been a participant. I've never actually needed one before.
Okay, well then I'll just take a little time to explain what the mediation is. So this is really a process for you two to have a discussion, and we're here as neutral facilitators to help that discussion move it along and hopefully create a discussion that can get places you couldn't get on your own, to help try to
Let's
build a common understanding so that each of you can really be heard by the other person. And hopefully, ideally, usually through this process, we find that there are places of overlap and we learn something new about the other person. And in the end, we can often find a resolution that's really meaningful and long-lasting. So we hope to get there tonight. We shall see. So for the specific process about how that's going to work, we are going to ask each of you to in turn tell you your story, what brought us here tonight. And we might interrupt you a little bit here and there to ask questions, and then we're going to just kind of spend more time asking questions and drawing out what's really going on here and trying to get to the underlying issues of what's really important to both of you. That process goes well, there might come a point where you're actually speaking to each other, and you'll move away from just speaking to us towards speaking to each other. And then if, things are still moving along great, then we might actually come to a point where we would try to figure out solutions with you too. And the solutions would come from you, so not from us at all. So are there questions about how the process is going to work?
I just hope it does. I hope it works. It's been frustrating, so.
I can see that it's a little tense for both of you right now. Well, Brad has some more reminders though before we begin. So.
It's tough. Thank you both for coming in. I'd just like to say a couple words about why I've been a volunteer mediator for 25 years. I've seen a lot of conflicts where there's every bit as much tension as there may be between the two of you. We really sense there's a lot of tension. And I'll be in the middle of the mediation and think, oh boy, we're just not going to get a good result out of that. But through the process that we'll go through, we have an opportunity to really hear each other and open up the opportunities for coming to a resolution. So I'm always very hopeful at the beginning of a mediated process. The process itself will begin by asking you to talk with us first rather than each other. And we'll listen to you and we'll tell you what it is that we're hearing and try to get a sense from you that we've really captured and have a good understanding of what it is that you're experiencing and how you see the situation. Then as the mediation goes on, we'll ask you to turn toward each other, physically turn toward each other in your chairs, and begin to discuss the issues, and we'll help that discussion. Our job is to create a safe environment for you to be able to have that discussion. And at the end, if there's some common ground and areas of solution that you're beginning to see, ask you to begin that process, and we'll assist in that process of seeing whether there's a resolution to the conflict that we're about to hear about tonight. We have 3 ground rules that we ask you to sign up for at the beginning of the mediation. One is to treat each other with respect. The second one is to have one speaker at a time. And the third is to speak directly to us at the beginning of the mediation, not to each other. Is that something that you both can agree to?
Can I add something?
Certainly.
To be more specific, that when we say be respectful and listening, it means no interrupting or, characterizing each other, calling names or yelling or, pointing hand gestures, just to try to keep things on a really open and communicative level. So can we all agree to that?
I mean, if she can do it, I can do it.
We need an agreement at the beginning. It's kind of a magic bullet for us. And that in all of the mediations that I've been involved with, I've been able to invoke those two rules
I
to
can do
treat
it
each other.
without being contingent on her.
But all we're asking is that you agree to those ground rules at the beginning of the mediation so that we can use your agreement in the mediation as it proceeds to say, at the beginning of the mediation, we all agree to treat each other with respect and to have one speaker at a time without interruptions.
Fair
Can I
enough.
get your agreement on that,
Fair
Alice?
enough.
You,
Oh,
okay.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. And again, the reason for this is that it may happen that we'll invoke the fact that we got an agreement at the beginning of the mediation for these ground rules. Okay, thank you very much. Also, you were sent a confidentiality form. Very often people don't bring them in. We're going to each sign them and ask you to do the same thing. The confidentiality form makes it clear that these proceedings are confidential and that by law we cannot be called on to testify in any kind of a court proceeding. And there's obviously no legal constraint on what you say outside of this mediation. We strongly encourage you to treat it confidentially as we will treat it confidentially.
Does that mean like we don't talk to anybody about this?
There's no legal constraint on you talking with people. We just think we're not going to talk with anybody. We're going to be taking notes, which we'll rip up at the conclusion. We'll use the notes so that we can try to capture as accurately as possible what you're saying. But that we think it's best if you treat this confidentially. We know that people go and might want to discuss it with their husbands or wives or friends or partners, and that's fine. But we think it's a good rule to treat what goes on in here so that we can be as open as possible, which really facilitates a mediation. That you both feel as comfortable and as safe expressing your feelings and your frustrations, your anger or sadness or whatever experiences that you're having in this conflict openly. We don't ask for an agreement because it's just not enforceable. And the only thing that is fixed is that we by law cannot be called upon to testify.
So if this were to go to court, if we had, if we can't come to an agreement here, then, and if it gets to that point, let's hope it doesn't, but if it did, then you guys couldn't come and testify, and I can't use any of this. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. And
So we'd be at square one, basically, is what you're saying?
You're talking about lawyers now?
It's our hope that you're not at square one, that we'll have spent a couple of hours going through this process, and we hope at the end of this process you have gone further along. One of our major goals is to create an environment in which you can communicate with each other. And we're not committed to finding a solution. We're committed to creating the conditions under which the two of you can find a solution to your conflict if possible. So we're not arbitrators. We can't come up with any kind of a decision for you. We can help create an environment that, through experience, we're sure will help you come to a good discussion of what your problem is.
Yeah, that helps.
Any questions? Any other rules? You might have some ideas of what you would like for the mediation? Have I left anything out?
Yes, outcomes.
Outcomes.
I can speak to that if you want. Okay, So we just wanted to say in advance what the possible outcomes might be, just to give you a little more ease of where this is going. We may come to a full resolution of all the issues that you're here today to resolve, and maybe more that you didn't realize you were here to resolve, and you may write those all out and agree to them and move forward. You may come to a partial resolution. Maybe there's a few things that you can agree on and some other things that you can't, and you just leave with those, some things resolved and the other things you can deal with later. You may not reach any kind of agreement, and maybe you just have a better understanding of each other's point of view and where you're coming from. You may want more time, and we can schedule another mediation if that's something you're really interested in. And so we will leave a little bit of time at the end of the night, right before we end, to check in with you and to see where we are about, coming to a resolution if we're there, or if we need to schedule more time. Okay?
Okay.
One of you originally brought the case to Seeds.
I did.
Was it you, Alice?
Yes.
We usually start with the person who brought the case to Seeds, and if you would just tell us both, remembering not to talk with Ella, what the situation is as you understand it right now.
Well, basically, in a nutshell, several months ago, our mother passed away, and she didn't leave a will. Before our mom passed away, Ella moved in with mom to give care to her. And while she did that, she lived in the house for free. And my partner and I, we took on the financial burden of maintaining the home and taking care of all of the financials. And now it's time to handle the estate. And, we're looking at, being reimbursed for the maintenance on the house, because the house is going to be sold, and it has definitely appreciated, which is odd in this economy, but it has appreciated. And so we would like to, at least before it is sold, figure out what maintenance costs, need to be reimbursed, and then split the difference after the sale of the home. And she is not willing to do that.
By the maintenance costs that need to be reimbursed, you speak of the money that you
That
and your partner spent on those.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. She didn't spend any money. She didn't pay for rent. She didn't, we pretty much paid for everything. She just lived there and lived with, with my mom. Granted, and I'm not gonna, take away from what she contributed, because she took care of her. So she definitely contributed, but not fiscally. So.
What I want to do now is just tell you what I've heard from you and try to characterize the world as seen from your perspective. First of all, your mother passed away several months ago, and without leaving a will. So right now you're in the situation of uncertainty that might have been specified in a will, but it hasn't been. You've got to resolve this with your sister. Ella, as I understand it, with your agreement, moved in to the home to take care of your mother. This was something the two of you discussed?
There was,
there
some discussion-ish, yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure I get this correct. Was that an issue?
It was something that was just kind of done, and then the decision was made, and then it was talked about, kind of a thing. So
Ella kind of moved in, and then the discussion about moving in?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
I see.
Yeah.
And was that something that you objected to, or were uncomfortable with when it happened, or were you...
It's typical Ella, so...
It was just a typical... So she was behaving in a way that wasn't unexpected.
No, this is characteristic.
Okay. And so there was a way in which the fact that it wasn't unexpected that you went along with it.
Exactly.
Okay. She's living in the house for free, so she neither offered nor or paid for
Correct.
rent and so on while she was taking care of her mother.
Correct.
She got free room and board while taking care of your mother. You, on the other hand, with your partner, took care of all of the financial arrangements, both the payment on the house and the maintenance of the house.
Yes.
And at this point, it's fairly clear to you that you need to be reimbursed for those expenses before you divide the assets. And I didn't hear,
Correct.
I didn't hear you say it, but it sounded like you were comfortable that after you had been reimbursed, a fair and even division of the assets.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
kind of
Yeah.
taking that from what you
Yes,
said.
I'm
But
looking at
that
it fair
was-
and reasonable.
But what's fair and reasonable also includes being reimbursed for the explicit money.
Correct.
And you have records for the money that was in fact spent by you and your partner?
Oh, yes, my partner is quite a taskmaster when it
Okay.
comes to record keeping.
So that it's not an
Everything
issue.
is dotted and crossed.
Okay, so the actual amounts of money in your mind are not an issue. You know what money you spent.
Yeah.
And very well, okay.
Pretty clear.
Very, very clear. Let me see, you seem to be appreciative that, and acknowledge that Ella did take care of your mother, and there's value to that. That you and your partner were appreciative that she moved in with your mother and took care of her in her final days. Did I misunderstand that?
I'm not quite sure where you're going with that.
Well, I'm trying to reflect what I heard you say, and it sounded like you acknowledged Ella taking care of her mother and saw value in that.
Well, yeah, she lived there and she took care of her. Yes.
But it sounds to me like I'm going further than is your sense of the situation, that you don't necessarily see value.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
It sounded like you were, and maybe I got this wrong, were appreciative of the fact that Ella had taken care of her mother in her final days. Maybe
Well, we both took care of her.
Oh, okay, and
We both took care of her. We both took care of her in ways that we could.
okay.
You know, she had the luxury of not working, and, you know, so she got to be there and, you know, be Ella,
I see.
and I had to work to provide the funding so that Ella could be Ella and
Okay,
take care of Mom.
okay. So what is,
Yeah.
as you said before, Ella was being Ella, doing what it is that she does and so on, and you were each contributing to the care
Absolutely.
of your mother, each in your own
Exactly.
in your own way.
Yes, exactly.
Have I left anything out? We'll come back and so on, and other things may occur to you as we go on, and we can touch those. But for now, is there anything that I've left out?
Yeah, that's good for now.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to hear from Ella, and before we hear from you, because I know it's hard to sit there and listen patiently, I wanted to say that I'm very sorry for the loss of your mother, because that, you said it was only a few months ago, and I can't imagine how difficult that must be and the grief that you're dealing with that. I mean, aside from specific issues that you've brought up tonight already, so I wanted to say I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard.
So please, Ella, share with us why you're here tonight.
Well, I mean, I guess Alice has covered it in her opinion. My perspective is a little bit different. 5 years ago, we started to look at some places for Mom to go. And I was working as a social worker at a time, and all of the places that we could afford for nursing homes were horrible. And so it just seemed like the best course of action, because I had more flexibility than Alice in terms of my employment, was for me to do it. I had some experience. I knew what I was doing. I've always sort of been a caregiver in some way. And so I thought we were pretty clear on the fact that, our contributions were the same. We were both doing what we needed to do to take care of our mom in our final days, in her final days. And so I moved in about 5 years ago, and I have been taking care of my mother full time since then. And now, all of a sudden, it turns out that our ways of contributing are not equal. So instead of being able to split it and my being reimbursed for my time and for the fact that if it weren't for me, either Mom's estate would have been divided years ago before she passed away because she would have had to move, or Alice would have had to pay additional money for an incredibly expensive caregiver or someone to be there full time and do what I was doing for free. Now all of a sudden it turns out that what she did was more valuable economically than what I was doing, even though there's a lot that I lost and a lot that I gave up, even if you can't measure it monetarily. So now I'm in a situation where I don't have a house, and I don't have the same relationship with my sister that I used to, and it feels like this 5 years I was suffering under the misapprehension that both of our work was equally valuable, and now it just feels like it's not.
Thank you. So let me try to summarize for you now, as we did for Alice. So you said that your mother started to fall ill, I guess, about 5 years ago?
Yeah, so she was diagnosed about 5 years ago and then declined pretty rapidly after that.
Okay, what was she diagnosed with?
She had Lou Gehrig's disease, so it's pretty progressive.
Okay. So your mother was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, and you two had to figure out some way to care for her because she couldn't care for herself anymore. And so you looked into a lot of nursing homes, and nothing was good. Nothing meted the standard that you wanted for your mother.
No, they were awful.
And you were working as a social worker, so it sounds like you had a little bit of experience in this area about maybe what to expect.
Yeah. I mean, I'd done it before with other people that I was working with, and so, yeah, some of that like day-to-day stuff was a little easier for me.
Okay. So it seems like it was an easy transition for you to decide, I will full-time move in with my mom and take care of her, because you felt like you could really handle that.
Yeah, and I was glad to do it.
Yeah. And you're glad to do it because it's your mom. You love your mom. Of course, you
Yeah.
want to do everything you can to take care of her, especially when she's sick.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. I heard you say you're a caregiver by nature. So
Yeah.
it sounds like it felt good for you to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And you saw that as a really large contribution in addition to your sister's contribution, equally large and as caring as giving, which was financial to help support the process of you caring for her and the estate so that it didn't have to be sold off. And you thought we're both taking equal parts in this, and we're both caring for our mom in different ways that are the same, and not one was valued more over the other.
Right. I mean, it's not like I thought Alice was doing nothing. I just didn't think that she was doing more than I was doing.
Yeah, I heard you say equal more than once, so you really felt that you were on the same playing field, although your roles were different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And I also heard that it was important for you to know how valuable your contribution was since this conflict has risen, because now you've heard Alice say that she really wants to put monetary value on things and to be reimbursed, and you want her to know that there was just as much value on your end of things, even though it's harder to put a number on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's it exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything else important you'd like us to know right now?
If I could just add a couple of things. I also heard you say you don't have a house now.
Yeah.
That you were in a house and you had, and you're now without
Right.
living quarters. And also heard you say that you've lost a relationship with your sister that you valued
Yeah, I mean,
as a result of the
yeah,
situation.
we had been pretty close. You know, there's a lot of decisions that we'd had to make about our mom as she was getting sicker and sicker, and sort of go from that to not being able to talk at all without it being like a huge deal. It was weird.
It sounds devastating. You've lost a parent and now you've lost your sister almost, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah.
Alice, thank you very much for listening to a point of view I'm sure you don't completely agree with.
No,
And,
I'm actually fuming right now.
You look angry to me. What have you heard that is making you fume? Making you
Well,
angry?
first off, that she doesn't have a home because she's not been evicted, that's for sure. She's still living in mom's house. And once the house is sold, she's going to have ample money to be able to purchase a home or rent or travel or whatever she would like to do with it. And her tone and implication that I just threw money at mom and she was the sacrificial lamb who cared for her is just annoying as hell. I'll tell you that right now. It just pisses me off. When we were looking at different care facilities, there were a couple that were okay, but she didn't like them. She had tantrums about them because her mother was not going to be in a home. And it was not my choice to put mom into a home. My choice definitely was to be able to keep her in her own home as long as possible. But Ella makes it sound like, you know, she just had this great job and that, you know, she sacrificed everything to move in with mom and to care for mom. And that's not the case. She was flighty. She had a job, then she didn't have a job. She had a job, she didn't have a job. Her jobs weren't consistent. And so really it was a sweet deal for her to move in with mom because she had the most consistent work of her life, 5 full solid years of consistency caring for our mother. She had room and board and, you know, everything was taken care of, plus she cared for mom. So she was compensated in that regard. She didn't have to have, you know, and then occasionally she would, you know, take off and go do things with friends and we would go and stay with mom on weekends and stuff. I'm not sure what you think is so funny.
That once
Excuse
every
me,
quarter I
we agreed at the beginning of the mediation was just speak with us and to treat each other with respect.
Is this how this is?
And
I know that it's very, very challenging to hear things that are upsetting and that kind of get your emotions up. So I'm going to encourage you to really try to, here, I'll give you some paper so you can take notes if there's things you want to write down and share later. So when we come back to you, you can have an opportunity to share what you'd like, okay? Thank you.
She got things I didn't get. And she's not seeing that that has a lot of value too. You know, she got to spend time with my mom while I was working 50 and 60 hours a week, sometimes 70 hours a week, so I could get the extra paycheck so that I could make sure that things were in good repair, that she neglected and let go to hell in a handbasket.
So you were working a lot and you didn't get to spend as much time
No.
with your mother as you would have liked?
Not at all. Because somebody had to earn the money to make sure that everything was taken care of. So there were sacrifices on both sides.
That sounds hard for you because you wanted to be there for her more in
Yeah.
the time of need when she was sick.
I wanted to be able to spend time with her and talk with her and hear her stories before she was gone.
How was your relationship with your mother? Was it
She
close?
was a crotchety old thing.
Crotchety old.
She was a crotchety old thing. Yes. She felt I worked too much and that I didn't let my hair down often enough. I needed to be more free-spirited like her.
More free-spirited.
Yes, but I loved her dearly. She sacrificed a lot to raise us.
Sounds like you take after your mother. Hardworking to take care of those you love.
Possibly. But that's neither here nor there. That's just, you know, how things are. You have to do what you have to do to make things happen for your family.
Let me go back to some of the anger and frustration you were feeling when Ella was talking. I just heard enormous frustration and anger when she says that she doesn't have a house anymore. So that makes no sense to you whatsoever. However this is resolved, she's going to have a pile of money with which she can either get a house or rent an apartment or travel if that's her desire. And the tone and implication that you were just throwing money at your mom, it just doesn't make sense.
No.
And it's not accurate, it's not true, and it's irritating to you. When you were looking at the care facilities, it's not accurate to say that all of them were bad.
No.
There were a couple that, in your view, were perfectly okay. I mean, your preference was to keep your mom, who was independent, just as soon prefer to stay in her home and follow her wishes as long as
she possibly could. But then towards, you know, the latter stages, you know, if we had to, then yeah, you know, go ahead and make sure she was in a fine facility. That way the burden was not on one solely.
And so you actually think Ella ended up with a pretty good deal, that she'd been going from job to job, her circumstances were uncertain, I think you used the word flighty, and that it was actually a sweet deal, that she got room and board for 5 years for nothing.
Well, that might have been a misspoke. That was a little strong, I would imagine, because not a sweet deal watching your mother die, I suppose, but it was the most consistent stretch of time she had had in her adult life with employment, let's say.
Okay.
So I retract my statement of it being a sweet deal, because there's nothing sweet about any of this.
Sure. But the transition wasn't as abrupt and actually worked to Ella's advantage.
It worked to her favor, yes.
If we can kind of retranslate.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
For 5 years, she consistently had room and board.
Yes.
Which was not the case
Correct.
before that. She could even take off with friends.
She could.
And, as I understood it, you would come in and take care of your mom while she
Yes.
was...
All she had to do was let us know ahead of time, and we would adjust so that we could, you know, make sure that we had work off and...
But it was difficult because you were working 40, 60, even 70 hours a week.
40 hours would be part-time.
Part-time, did I say 40? I meant to say 50, 60, I misspoke.
Yes.
I meant to say 50, 60, or 70 hours
Yes.
A week.
Yes.
And you needed to earn the money. Part of working that many hours
Correct.
was to take care
Correct.
of your mother. And without working that hard, it wouldn't have been possible.
No, it would not.
And Ella wouldn't have been able to...
No, she would have been on the street.
Let's see, would I leave anything out there? I think I have,
No, that pretty well covers it right there. You know, the house wouldn't have needed the maintenance upkeep and the cost of the maintenance upkeep that it needed had Ella, you know, put some sweat equity into it. But she didn't. So, you know, had she put some sweat equity into it, that would be a different scenario altogether. You know, we would have happily provided the supply and she'd provide the sweat and we'll call it even, but that wasn't the case. She wouldn't. And so things as simple as, you know, the drains around, you know, the gutter drains, instead of getting up there and cleaning them out, just let them fill and pretty soon rot, so we have to hire someone to come in and replace the whole thing. Things like that, they didn't have to happen, but they had to be replaced.
Right.
And somebody had to pay for that. And so that's where, my partner's like, wait a minute, that needs to be reimbursed. And I'm like, well, you got a point, okay, and that makes sense to me.
So things wouldn't have been anywhere near
No.
as bad, even if perhaps Ella wasn't capable of doing the maintenance, but at least reporting it. And from what I understand, you're saying it wasn't even reported so that you could in fact attend to it.
Rarely.
There were times so that.
Occasionally, and we get, supplies, or say, do you need supplies? Or, well, no, I'm not gonna handle that. And so then we'd hire somebody.
So it sounds like you really wish that Ella had have done more kind of repairs along the way so that you wouldn't have had to do repairs after the fact, which you, it sounds like, and your partner were both kind of invested in because you're together, you're both
Right.
bearing this
Yes.
cost.
Well, yeah, when you're married, you do it as a, you don't just, oh, honey, I'm gonna take care of my family and you sit over there. It's,
So how
do it together.
has your partner been very supportive during this? Tell us more about.
supportive in what regard? You mean as far as supporting me in my mother's passing and all of that?
Yeah, well, it sounds like you had to make some of these decisions together, not just alone.
Oh, you mean as far as the house and the repairs and so forth? Yeah, I mean, it's our bank account. It's our our fiscal stability. We make all of those decisions together. We don't have a your account kind of relationship. We have a years to play and an hours to live off of kind of thing. But yeah, so it came out of the joint account. So yeah, she's frustrated. She's frustrated.
So you have to also deal with her, and not only is there a conflict between the two of you as sisters, you also have to deal with your partner saying, what's happening with this?
Mhm.
Are we going to resolve this?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds very stressful as well on your relationship.
Just a touch, yeah. A little bit.
What's your partner's name?
Barb.
Barb?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've been talking with you, Alice, a while, and I want to make sure that we really give equal time to both of you, so you both have a chance to speak. So is it all right if we hear from Ella
yeah.
for a little while? Yeah. You've been sitting very patiently listening.
If this is how this is gonna go, like, this feels like less like a mediation and more like a character assassination. So I guess there's probably some stuff that I can say. It's hard to sit and have someone call you flighty. When I've worked hard, I worked my way through my bachelor's because there wasn't money for me to get through that. I worked my way through my master's. And it's not my fault that the field that I chose to work in oftentimes doesn't have money. So it's not like I was like, oh, I'm gonna go and live in Italy. I was between jobs because grants fell through. So it's incredibly frustrating to hear that mischaracterized as like, I'm flighty, I don't know how to hold down a job, that I was lucky for 5 years to watch my mom die. So if Alice wanted to come over and take our mom off the toilet and give her showers and listen to her talk about how wonderful her daughter Alice was and how she was making it in the corporate world and blah, 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 that would be awesome. But instead, I had to call Alice and Barb, who totally dislikes me, every month or two when I wanted to leave the house at all.
She doesn't dislike.
Oh, please. Oh, please. Every time that I call, the tone in Barb's voice is like, where's the money? Where's the money? What did you do about this? How come the drains aren't clean? Because taking care of our mom was a full-time job. And I will agree that there's some stuff that I didn't catch early enough. And some of it is just that it's an incredibly old house. It's the house that our mom had when she got married. So I don't think that it's fair to say like, oh, it cost thousands and thousands of dollars and it wouldn't have cost anything if I hadn't been there. That's not true. That's not true at all. And if Alice wanted that time with mom, that would have been great. And I heard her say that there's all of this stuff, like this beautiful stuff that she didn't get, which like mainly involved like cleaning crap and, you know, like making meals for my mom and watching her not be able to walk. And, you know, it wasn't like this amazing bonding experience. Watching someone die sucks. Like it just always sucked. And there was good times. Like I love my mom and, you know, I mean, I really was glad to do it. And being a social worker, when we walked into those places that Alice thought were fine, those nursing homes, like there was always red flags. There were always things that were just like, this place isn't managed well. I don't want my mom to go there. Like it makes sense for her to be in her home. Like she was an incredibly independent person. And to take that away from her would have been really hard. So there's the thing that I feel like Alice doesn't acknowledge, and I get that a lot of it is because her job is incredibly stressful, and I know that Barb has an incredibly stressful job, but there's a bunch of stuff that I didn't get when I made this decision that she did get, like having economic freedom. And like, yes, I will have housing when this is over, but I won't have a house. I won't have the place that I have spent 5 years in making a home that's been our childhood home. And I get that it needs to be sold, but that's what I mean. Like I will literally be homeless because the place that I've been living for 5 years and that I have, you know, apparently not taken great care of, but I have invested time in my own way that has been where I've been. That's what I'll be missing. And that's hard. And I feel like there's something to be said for like an equal split between that, because there are things that I have done for the house, and I get that they're not the things that Alice was paying for, but I don't think it's fair to say that I did nothing in that house. And she also has had economic freedom. She has the freedom to have relationships. Like she could go out with her friends or her partner and not have to call anybody. Whereas I've lost contact with my friends because who wants to be friends with someone who can never really leave the house without calling weeks in advance
When
and
could
setting
I
it
go
up?
out? I was working.
Alice?
You at least had the potential. You had the potential to go on a date, to have friends. And that's something that I gave up, and I got that. I knew that it was going to make things more difficult. Like, who wants to bring someone home when your mom's home, you know? I'm 38 years old, that's weird. That's a freedom that Alice had that I didn't have. And I just feel like that needs to be acknowledged, that I wasn't the one that had like this amazing life and I could go anywhere and do anything and it was the sweet deal that I had. That's not the reality at all.
Well, so I'm hearing that you made a lot of sacrifices, and do you want
Yeah.
them to be acknowledged? Because Alice may have made financial and working sacrifices, and you also want her to hear that you made a lot of personal sacrifices too, for your career, for your friends. You devoted all your time to your mother at the loss of other things that were also important to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and it's hard, right? Like, she's gone, and I don't want it to sound like, you know, I thought it was a mistake. Like, I'll never think that having done this was a mistake, but it is hurtful to hear it be characterized as something that was easy, or like just a decision that was also convenient for me to make, or, you know, something where it sounds like Alice's characterization, I sound like, you know, some hippie freeloader who was like just hanging out with her mom for 5 years. And that's, you know, that's not true. That's not what was happening. Like, it was a heavy thing that I was doing.
Yeah. Well, it sounded like Alice really envied a bit the amount of time you got to spend with your mother. And at the same time, well, you did get a lot of that time. It wasn't all roses. You had to really deal with a lot of sad things that were really hard to watch your mother go through and deteriorate. And it was,
Yeah.
it sounds really, really difficult.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was incredibly painful. I mean, there were times that were great, you know, I mean, times that we got to spend together. I thought of that as sort of like the payback for all the times that were really hard and really ugly, where you were doing stuff to and for your mom that no one should have to do.
So it sounds like you did get to have some nice moments with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, Alice was right. Like, she was a pretty crotchety woman, so, you know, full-time caretaking for a woman who doesn't want you to take care of her is a little problematic sometimes,
But she
yeah.
also didn't have to do it alone, because I offered and she refused.
No way. That's not even,
I
no.
offered a lot, Alice, and Ella, and you didn't.
Very shortly, you're gonna start talking with each other, but let's just finish with Ella first.
Yeah.
I did hear you say some more important things, and one in particular that you started with was that word flighty really was hurtful to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. Like, it's been hard to not have consistent work since I got my master's, and I have tried hard. Social work is a really hard field to remain consistently employed in. And so it's hard to think like all of those times where I was struggling and like, I don't have a 401k and I don't have good job security, and I was heartbroken when I had to leave my clients. Like, that to my sister, that whole time that I was struggling before I moved in with my mom, it was like me making the choice to go from job to job to job, as opposed to like the devastation of you go to work and you find out that there's no money, and like you have to figure out how you're gonna deal with that and where you can work next, and you know what grants are gonna come through. Like, yeah, that's hugely hurtful to me.
So you picked a field of something that you love, and at the same time is really challenging to find steady work in, and so you don't have that stability you might have. And so it sounds like sometimes, you know, it would be nice to have the stability that Alice does.
Yeah, and I mean, I know Alice works hard, but she's worked at the same place for like, what is it now, like 15 years, you know? Like, she's got seniority.
That's a long time.
She's got a lot of steadiness. She and Barb can plan a lot of things. You know, like, I don't have that ability. Like, I can't see anything in the social work field where I would be able to work somewhere, the same place for 15 or 20 years. Like, it's just not possible during the work that I do.
It must be really stressful career-wise to not kind of know what's coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the other thing now is like, what am I going to put on the resume? You know, like, helped my mom die, 5 years. Like, I don't have, you know, I'm going to have to go back, and I got that, and I knew when I moved in that there was going to be this point. Like, we knew that our mom wasn't going to live forever, but it's hard to go back into the job market as it is now and feel like, you know, I mean, if Alice left her job now, like, she'd be able to put amazing things on her resume, and for the last 5 years, I can't go out into the world and present something that looks as good as my sister looks on paper, even though I think what I've been doing is important. You know, it's not in our general society.
I also heard it sounded like you acknowledged that in retrospect, you probably could have kept a better eye on some of the maintenance issues. Is that correct?
I mean,
did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, like, fine, Alice is probably right in that, like, the stuff with the gutters was definitely a mistake. Like, you know, I wasn't paying attention. I think the thing that's true is like the balancing of caretaking our mom and caretaking the house, like, our mom was always more important. So there was a bunch of stuff that, like, you know, I would try to do, but if my mom has some sort of medical emergency, like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm cleaning the gutters. I'll like pick you up from the floor when I'm done. You know, I mean, things stop and start because that's the nature of taking care of someone who's sick and needs around the clock care. So like, to a point, I will say, yeah, there's some specific things that Alice covered, which she and Barb let me know at the time I could have done a much better job of. And I think there's a lot of it that they blame me for that was going to happen to the house regardless.
We're kind of at about the halfway point.
I was looking at
Yeah.
the clock, and also we've agreed on 2 hours rather than a little bit longer. I was thinking, this may be a good time to
Yeah, I
begin
think,
a conversation. And, I was thinking of you begin by telling Alice about the maintenance issue from your perspective, and what it's like to both take care of your mother and to maintain the house, and possibly in retrospect that you could have imagined doing a little better job on that. And if you both turn your chairs so that you're,
so Brad, I would want to do that. I was thinking maybe we should take our break before then, because I don't want them to, start talking and maybe having a conversation, then we have to say, oh, we should take a break.
oh, the break. Oh, the break.
Are you,
Good idea. I'm for
Yes?
Yes.
okay. Are you good with taking a break right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes? You've shared a lot, you might need to take a moment too.
Yeah, I need to go for a walk.
Yeah.
So let's
When do we need to
take
be back here?
15 minutes. So
Okay.
come back at 7:19. We'll be getting in. Come on back in and have a seat. All right. Thanks for coming back on time.
Sure.
So we can begin. We want to honor our end point tonight for you. So Brad and I were talking during the break, and it dawned on us that you are sisters, and we don't know much about your relationship as sisters beyond this conflict and the past 5 years and how you've gone forth and taken care of your mother. So we were hoping that you could enlighten us a little bit more about your relationship with each other, perhaps before this particular conflict started. So we'd like to hear about that. Would one of you like to begin? Ella?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right, when you're fighting with someone to think about how you used to get along.
True.
But yeah, I mean, what I said in the beginning is true. We've always been really close, I mean, she's my older sister, so she, she took care of me a lot when I was growing up. She always was, advocating for me, and she's been, she's been supportive of my accomplishments. She was there when I graduated from my undergrad and with my master's, and I know that she, she hasn't always had it super easy, so I've tried to be supportive of her too, especially, when other people in our family would say stuff about, her partner and, like not be super accepting of her or whatever. So, we've been close, and the process of trying to, keep mom in her home, and all those choices, it was, yeah, I mean, we've been pretty close up until now, I guess is what I would say.
It's really great to have a sister and you're at a close relationship with, and it sounds like you really both supported each other at different points in your life. And she was the older sister and looked out for you
Yeah.
through your whole graduate, and then when she was facing other family members, maybe, I'm not sure what you said, non-approval or difficulties
Yeah.
about her partner, you had her back then. So you got to kind of
tried
protect
to.
each other.
Yeah,
That's really great.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
And she's been an advocate for you from time to time.
Yeah,
in
no,
important
absolutely.
ways.
Absolutely.
Well, she was, my baby. I mean, my mother brought her home, and that was that. My mother didn't get to raise her, I did. She was mine, and I
That
was
was your
going to
baby.
care for her. Yes, no one could do it better. That's how it was growing up. She was a little doll.
That's so sweet.
That's, but we're grown up now.
But, say before 5 years, did you have feelings similar to Ella's about the relationship?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, we've always been very close. I mean, yeah, it's hard. I mean, even when she was caring for my mom, we were close. She gives good care to, she was giving good care to my mom.
Can I ask you two to face toward each other now, and if you would tell Ella that directly? Would you describe the care that you saw being given to your mom by Ella? Can you turn your chair toward Ella? And Ella, can you turn your chair? A little bit more. Kind of a face-to-face deal here.
It's uncomfortable.
Hi.
Yeah,
It's
we're
just
not,
really uncomfortable.
not from emotional stock, really.
We don't.
Are you comfortable enough now to tell her what you saw with regard to the kind of care that Ella gave your mother? If you could tell Ella.
Well, it's hard because it's so fresh.
Yeah, no, I know.
And I know she was not easy at all
You and I both know that.
by any stretch. But you did a bang-up job. I mean, I know you had to bathe her and you never drowned her once.
Oh, there were times.
So that's pretty good. No arsenic in her food. No, I mean, you know what I'm getting at. I mean,
No, I know.
You gave good care to her, and someday I'm going to be old and decrepit, and hopefully you won't be, and you can give care to me too. But you did a good job.
Thanks.
It's hard for me because I didn't get to be there. You got to sit with her and I didn't. It was shitty, literally and figuratively, but you got stuff that is worth more than money. You got stuff that I didn't get to have.
And I mean, I heard you tell them, that you would have been willing to come over more, and
I offered and you just turned me down. You didn't hear me.
yeah, I just assumed like who else would want to do this, and Barb was always talking about how you guys, were planning to do this with your free time, and I didn't want to ask you to not go on vacation so that you could, come hang out with
But Ella,
Mom.
what's more important in life? Going on a trip or being with my family?
I don't know. Every time that we talked, it was just about money. Like, I just sort of figured like we'd staked our claims in different worlds. Like, I didn't know that it was.
You never asked.
I didn't know how to ask. Like the realities of like 24/7. Like, is Mom breathing while she's sleeping? Did she go to the bathroom and I have to clean her up? Like, did she eat again? Like, are her meds due? Like, I was so overwhelmed that I didn't have the bandwidth to think about, like, does my sister want to be here more? Did
That's
Alice
why-
and Barb
but
want
that's
to come
why
over
I
for
offer.
dinner?
That's why I would offer.
So,
Yeah.
Ella, I'm really hearing that that's very important to Alice, that she wishes that she could have spent more time, and she wanted to take on more of the care and the physically being there. And it sounds like that was new information for you. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess-
how does that feel now that you know this?
I guess that I mean, she would say like, well, maybe I can come over sometimes, and I just thought, I mean, that's like, I thought you were being polite, I didn't know that it was like, you really wanted to be there. I thought that it was, just like someone says like, oh, maybe you can come over for dinner next week.
Have you not met me? I mean, you've known me for your entire life. I don't ever just be polite. I'm too much like Mom in that regard.
Touche. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. I hear you say that you asked me, and I didn't hear that you were asking it with sincerity, and I mean, I guess it wasn't my intention, but I guess it must feel like I kept you from some of those times that Mom and I had, or that you think that
Thank you
Mom
for
and I
that,
had.
because it does. It absolutely did. It absolutely does.
That wasn't, I didn't know that.
Can you tell Ella what you just heard her say?
That, I heard you say that you get it, that it must have felt like you were trying to, from my perspective, trying to keep Mom to yourself, basically. And that is what I was feeling. That's exactly what I was feeling. Every time I would ask, and it was like my money was good enough, but, my time wasn't. And so you heard it. I heard you say that you heard me.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't my intention at all. And like, I feel like you think that Mom and I had this like amazing bond because of what I was doing, but like,
Well, she always liked you better.
oh, false.
Oh, no, it's not false.
No.
Oh,
How many
so
times
not
we would be
false.
sitting at the dinner table and she would be like, I wonder what interesting thing Alice is up to. I mean, did you remember her say the last time that she was over that she was working on this and this deal? And did you know that she knows this person? And, does like, what is her salary now? It's so amazing. Like, I never thought that my daughter was gonna, like reach these amazing heights. And Barb's work is so phenomenal. And like, don't they have such a great marriage? And like, blah, blah, blah.
She never.
Oh, please.
She
all
hated the fact
time.
that I am gay.
No. I mean, she was not great, right? Like you and I
Yeah,
both
she
know
was
that.
not thrilled about that at all.
But I think she liked Barb more than you think that she liked Barb.
Oh, probably because she makes more money than I do, and that's probably.
Okay, I mean, we're not gonna lie. That might have been a little bit of it when Barb's career started taking off.
Yeah.
Then, but we would talk. She would talk about you a lot. She would talk about you a lot and how proud she was of you.
I've never
And-
once in my lifetime heard her say that, ever.
Well, I was not necessarily aware that I was the favorite either because, all of our conversations were about like, when you woke me up this morning, you were too rude. Why is my breakfast this way? This is like, I don't like these type of undergarments. They're too rough. Like, I mean, the constant, like, no recognition for what it was that I was doing, and all of this conversation about how amazing my big sister was and all of these wonderful things that she was doing. And wasn't it so great that she had all of this income that she could help? So
Interesting,
because
because
was
whenever
not
I
doing-
talked to her, it was just the opposite. It was, Ella. Why can't you be more like Ella? She's so free-spirited. She lets her hair down. She's so not uptight like you.
It sounds like you're both making discoveries here.
Her mom was a witch.
Yeah, clearly.
Does it
She
surprise
didn't really
you?
do anything about it, but
She played a little bit of both sides there.
I mean, we've never had a household where it was very easy for us to say, like, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I mean, that's just like
Words of affirmation. We're not
Yeah,
high on the priority
not-
list in our house, no.
not really our thing.
Sounds like an area of an agreement.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
think we can agree that my mom was not great with emotions. I feel comfortable
Okay, fair enough
saying
on
we
that.
agree on that one for sure.
Congratulations. It's your first agreement of the
We look for
An hour
any
and a
kind of an agreement.
I agree that our mom is a little bit
Oh,
manipulative
wow.
and
Well,
Oh,
well,
geez.
money well spent tonight.
we're delighted to have agreements. It's some place to start, and with the limited amount of time that we have left.
No, I don't think Barb's gonna be thrilled that that's the only thing we've got.
I know, I'm sorry about that. I know this is a lot of Barb too. You know, I'm sorry that she wasn't able to be here tonight, and I guess there's also, that's a little bit the elephant in the room too. I guess Barb and I also kind of have a conflict in some way, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we have. I sense that there's a lot.
Go ahead and feel free to ask.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for Barb, would we be here right now?
To this degree, I don't know. I mean, I do feel like some of her points are valid, and that's why we're here. I wouldn't be here if I didn't agree with some of them. Do I think she can temper it a bit? Absolutely. You know, she tends to go this way, I tend to go that way, so that's why we kind of meet in the middle a little bit and balance each other out. I mean, Ella, I do think that, you know, some of these monies are reimbursable. You know, some of the monies that were put into the home were, whether or not Mom lived there, we would have had to have maintained the home in order to sell it, and it would have been reimbursed to whomever put those monies into the home, right? And so, you know, in that regard, that's the part I agree with.
Ella, before you answer,
So-
would you tell Alice what you just heard her say?
Yeah, I mean,
Before you answer.
Sure. I think what I heard Alice say is, you know, which I guess I knew, like, we probably would have still had some issues around the money, that there's some of these things that when we were getting ready to sell the house, someone would have done, and thus someone would have been reimbursed for, but that also, you know, there's that, you know, she and Barb have different personalities, and Barb's personality is to sort of push things maybe a little bit further, which has I guess been my experience, but that there still are some things that needed to be reimbursed.
Go ahead and make your points.
Well, hold on. Did she get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like, you know, that wasn't something that I considered before. I mean, I guess when it was just like every single dollar that we put into the house, we get back and then we split it, like that didn't seem very fair. But I mean, I guess I never thought about the fact that like some of this would have been reimbursed to somebody at some point when we sold the house, just because of the nature of some of the, you know, I mean, like I know the roof was like a big thing, and that
It was huge.
You know, you can't sell a house without fixing that, so someone would have had to do that regardless. I mean, I think I just like the thought of like Alice and Bart being able to recoup every single thing that they had done over 5 years, and like my not having any ability to recoup anything that I felt like I had lost over 5 years, like that didn't feel fair. So I didn't really think about, you know, anytime we sold the house, some of this would have been reimbursed to them anyways.
So,
So hold on. Before you respond to that, we're going to ask you to do the same thing that Ella did for you. And if you could reflect back to her what she just shared, because she shared something that felt really important to her.
what I heard, the key piece that I heard was that the reimbursable part to you, and that's what I was just going to get clarification on. What I heard you say is that you know, when you were viewing it as Barb and I wanting every single nickel and dime that we put into the house back
Yeah.
100%, and that you weren't gonna be reimbursed for anything that you put in, meaning your time and your efforts. At least that's the way I'm hearing it. And you never thought about, you know, the fact that these things like the roof and so on and so forth would have had to have been replaced and reimbursable anyway. So did I?
Yeah.
So I guess my question then, for clarification, is what, because you did give up, you know, I acknowledge that you gave up to stay with mom, right? You stopped working in the field with an employer per se.
Right.
Okay, and having a 401k and that kind of stuff. So what are you looking at being reimbursed? And I'm not even talking giving me a dollar amount, I'm just talking about what tangible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing, right? Like it, so much of what I was doing was intangible, and so like trying to figure out what would like, you know, like what's a tangible amount for an intangible thing that I've been doing, like I don't know,
give you
like
time.
no, I mean you can't give me a better resume, like you know, there's a bunch of stuff that you can't give me. I guess it just felt like, you know, okay, this is like, if we're honest, right, like this is all that we have left of our family, right? Like this house, like that's it. Dad's already gone. It's just the two of us. Like this is the remnant of our family. And what it felt like was like, okay, this huge chunk that is, you know, that's like all of what you and Barb put in, you know, like that's your whole contribution. Like it totally comes out, and then whatever is left is split between the two of us. So it just felt like, you know, this thing that is, you know, like that's what's left of what we've got. You know, I get a smaller share of, and I get that like some of that is like you were saying, you know, logistics of things that we would have had to do anyways, and like, you know, I mean, you know, like I've rented my whole life. There is a lot of this that I don't totally understand. But that just sort of felt like, you know, like this is it. This is us dividing our family, you know, like splitting up what we've got left.
Well, I just
of our
heard two
family.
things that I need to get clarification on, because I want to make sure I'm understanding you really clearly, because they're kind of like, wow. Two things. One was we're dividing up our family. So are you not talking about the money? Are you talking more about the emotional connection to the house and to the things that are in it that we're dividing up? Or are you talking about the money?
Well, I mean, I guess that's it, right? Like that they're the same thing. Like we get rid of this house. There's a bunch of mom stuff that like, you know, I mean, it's got to go somewhere. We've got to do something about it. It's going to turn into cash, like, but that's I mean, that's what I've been living in for 5 years. Like this house, this stuff, like I know that it has to be gone, but that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. So yeah, I mean, it feels like it feels like it's more than just a dollar amount. Like it's not, you know, I mean, it's not like.
You realize it's going to take time to sell this thing, right?
Yeah, but it's been 4 months, right? Like tomorrow will have been exactly 4 months.
Right.
And so it's, I don't know what it's going to be like. I can't think about doing that right now. Like I can't think about packing up my stuff. I can't look at mom's stuff right now. Like there's no way. And all of a sudden we're like talking about like, okay, this is what I get when we sell the house. And like, it feels like it could happen tomorrow. Like, I don't know these things, so I don't know how long it takes, but I can't, like, it's gonna be forever until I can look at, like, the bathrobe that she's worn for the past 5 years every single morning, or those stupid slippers that make the sound, so I always knew she was coming down the hallway 12 minutes before she got there. Yeah, like, I can't do that right now.
It makes more sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
So could you reflect back just what Ella shared, because she shared something really emotional
Yeah.
and scary, and I want to make sure that she really feels heard about that.
That this isn't about the money as much as it is about you being able to grieve and to deal with what's going on with you and saying goodbye to Mom. And you've been there for 5 years and that's all you've known, and doing it now is too soon. That's what I'm hearing. Am I hearing it right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, you know, there was so much to do, right? You know, I mean, when she died, there was like all the medical stuff, and there was, you know, the law, and then we found out that there was no will, and then like, you know, so there's always like, my to-do list is so long, and like, you know, now finally being at a point where it's like, the to-do stuff is over, and then all of a sudden it's like, shit, this house, like, this is what we have. It's where we grew up. It's, you know, I mean, like, our attic has all of our yearbook photos, and like, you know, I mean, all of that stuff that we played with together when we were kids. And the reality of like, once we do this, like, it's gone. And I don't think that I realized that. And so when you start coming at me with like numbers, and Barb says this, and she's, you know, and I mean, I know Barb, so I know she's got like files for the last 5 years, and like, this is the total, this is, right, you know, this is what we're gonna do, and it, you
She's
know.
an engineer. She doesn't have emotional connection.
Right,
It's
you know,
just
and
all-
I don't dislike her, you know, I mean, you know,
And
when
she
you guys got
doesn't
together.
dislike you. She really doesn't. She just doesn't know how to
Okay,
be
I
warm
mean,
and
that,
fuzzy.
yeah.
She
yeah.
doesn't.
That I get. But it just all felt like it was gonna happen really soon, and like, I didn't know, I didn't understand the process, you know, but then all of a sudden, this thing that for me was really emotional, it started to just look like dollars and cents when we were talking about it, and that, it was just tough. You know, I wasn't ready to think about that yet, because I just finished all of the stuff that, you know, we'd had to, like, that long list of the funeral preparation, and who do we call,
That
and
makes
who
sense,
doesn't
though.
know.
That makes sense on, because you didn't make sense. The way you reacted, because you didn't respond, and you normally respond to things, and you just reacted. You were a wackadoodle. I'm not gonna lie. You were a little bit of a wackadoodle, and you weren't you. And so that's why I was taken so aback. You know, and I think that's why my hackles got up, and that's why we ended up here. So
Yeah.
now you're sounding like Ella, and you're making more sense to me, and I understand, and I'm sorry that I wasn't more sensitive to the fact that it's so soon. I just was on that, get the business done, get everything done, so that then we can calm down and just kind of be and settle and cry and whatever we need to do.
Well, and I mean, and that's like, you know, if I'd been thinking more, that's always been like a difference with us, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're like, I want all the practical stuff done so that I can have my emotions, and I'm like, you know, the emotions are what keep me from being able to think about any practical things at all, and that's, you know, I mean, that's when I was, you know, really reacting when you guys were coming at me with these numbers, because it was just like, you know, I didn't even know how I was feeling, you know, I mean, like, I wasn't sleeping, it's weird in that house, it's, you know, all of these things sort of running through my head, and I didn't know where I was, you know, I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I know that must have been hard for you, and I can see how, like, not being able to understand that led us here.
You also, because I said there were two things.
Yeah, sorry.
You said the other thing and I had this thought, because you've said it before, how you gave up all this stuff, right? And that I can't give you back time, obviously. But you said something about your resume. And yeah, we can work on that, Ella. Because your 5 years of time, you were still giving care. You were still doing what you do.
I mean,
And you weren't working for a corporate entity or some housing development or some, old folks home or whatnot, but you still were working. That can be we can create that. Oh,
Really?
We can wordsmith the hell out of that thing.
because I mean, I guess that was like the big thing was like, I feel like what I've done is important. Like I know and I appreciate that I didn't realize that you thought what I was doing was important, but like,
course.
I'm gonna go to, like Goodwill or Loaves and Fishes and be like, well, for the 5 years, I have maximized my portfolio by, like washing the dishes every day and feeding someone, I mean, I guess you're in HR, so you would be the person who would know, but like, it just it just felt like I was not gonna get anything.
We can definitely work on that.
If I can interrupt just a second, we have 10 minutes more.
Okay.
We agreed to end at 8 o'clock. And so at the beginning of the mediation, we described we come to some kind of an agreement or a partial agreement or even agree to meet again. It seems like a lot of progress has been made tonight, but I'm not sure enough progress is made to come to an agreement with regard to how the possessions of your mother are going to be distributed between the two of you.
I just want to say what's happening right here is really beautiful. And you two have really made some wonderful acknowledgments that you've heard new things about the other person's perspective and that you didn't know. And it really, let the other person know you heard that. And I heard Alice, you made a beautiful apology saying, I didn't know that's how you were feeling. And so that I just wanted to stop and acknowledge that because
No idea.
what you're doing right now for people who say they're not very good with emotions, you are really letting your emotions fly tonight.
This never happened.
No. This isn't a private room, so no one's
I
going to
know, this
see
is the part that's confidential.
Exactly.
Well, so our question is, with, little less than 10 minutes left, what would you like to do for these last few minutes?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it is probably going to be a longer conversation, but I do feel like I have a much better understanding of what you were asking me in the beginning.
I think you do too, and I think that I go home and I can talk to her and let her know how this went, and maybe the three of us can come together now that you know she doesn't hate you and trust that she doesn't hate you.
I do
Okay.
trust that.
Just
You can
know
be a little less like a robot.
that's probably not going to happen.
Okay.
It's sort of
Adjust my expectations.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're gonna have to,
All
because
right.
she's just kind of, that's just kind of how she is.
Okay. Well, as long as it's not personal. I
It
guess that's
isn't,
the-
it
okay.
isn't. It took me
Alright.
years to kind of get over that. Kept wanting, for better or for worse, right? Anyway,
You're the married one.
I know.
Did I hear that there was an agreement about the three of you getting together?
Yeah, I mean,
think
that probably makes sense. It's hard to do a lot of this without
it
Barb
is,
anyways,
'cause she's
so-
part of it.
yeah.
She is part of it. So why don't we just do that? I'll go home and talk to her, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, no, I mean that just makes sense.
Okay, and then we'll look at the schedule and figure out 2 or 3 dates that will work for our schedule, and then I'll let you know, and you can let us know which one
Yeah,
of those will
yeah,
work
yeah.
for you.
Well, schedule's open right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Do you want to meet in a neutral place, or do you want to come to our house?
I mean, I'll come to your house. I haven't been to your house for a while.
Okay. All right. And then we can sit down and figure it out. And just go over the numbers and figure out, what is reasonable. And I will talk to her about realistic and unrealistic expectations of this.
Okay, I mean, as long as like there can be some conversation and it's not just like an all or nothing thing, like it'd be fine to sit down with you guys. And I mean, I think I heard that you heard me say that, some of it is emotional and some of it is like that fear of what happens when this house is gone and like I don't have anything to show for it.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're willing to help me figure out like how I tell people this is something that I've done, like,
I can help you with that.
that would help. The unemployment fears are pretty, with my past job history, they're pretty big.
I can understand that, absolutely. No, that actually I think would be wonderful to be able to help you with.
That's 2 agreements that you have just made.
On
Congratulations.
a roll. Damn, sister.
That's quite impressive.
We also want you to know that if it made more sense to you in the future to do this in a mediated session, that we're available when it's one of the things that happens in mediation is an agreement to continue the mediation in another one. So it doesn't sound to me like that's required, at least in the way you're
Right.
talking about it now.
Right.
But you can call the office if in fact in your discussions and setting up the meeting and so on, it begins to make sense to you. And the people at the Seeds office will do everything they can to bring us back together so we can, we're already familiar.
Oh, okay, so it wouldn't be like new people we
Right.
could get, okay.
With you guys again.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, maybe, I mean, I guess it's at least good to know that that's
In
an option,
case
right,
that
right.
doesn't go well.
Yeah, and then we could bring Barb in too, okay.
Definitely.
As long as you all agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if we can get her to agree. She's a tough.
No surprises.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
Well, we often offer to write down the agreements that people come up with in our mediation. Would you like us to do that for you now, or do you feel like you're good to go? You came up with a lot of specifics about, I'm going to call you and give you 3 dates and where it's going to be. So it sounds like you've already hammered out a lot of those details.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Alice does for a living, so I trust that
Okay.
she remembers and she'll hold us to the schedules.
And pretty
Yeah,
good.
that's fine. Sometimes people like to have it written down so they can say, like, this is what I agreed on.
Right,
You can
right.
remember and
Yeah.
refer to it. If you don't need that, that's
Okay.
great.
I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
She was proud of me.
Yeah, dude, so proud. Yeah. Do you remember that like company award that you got? Oh my God, for like a week and a half, every single day.
I'm sorry.
Do you remember that Alice got that award? It was so
I'm so
amazing.
sorry.
First woman to get that award. Did you know that?
I'm sorry.
One of the most important things we do in a mediation is end the mediation on time, and I think we've got, I think we have a wonderful point here, and I'd like to echo Maddie's appreciation of how far you've come and
Very
how much,
far.
yeah, you've just done an extraordinary job.
You did a lot of work here tonight.
Good job, sister.
You too. Miss you.
I know, I miss you too.
No,